In 1998, 8 boys climbed into a van for a weekend wilderness camp in the Oregon mountains. They were singing camp songs, throwing paper balls at each other, their duffel bags piled high in the back. By sunrise, they were gone. No bodies, no footprints, no ransom notes. Just 8 unmade beds and a camp counselor with $40,000 in his newly opened bank account. The boys were Ryan Mitchell, 14, straight-A student who played violin and hated the outdoors. Alex Turner, 13, the troublemaker whose parents hoped camp would straighten him out. Marcus Cole, 13, quiet kid who drew comic books during every free moment. David Kim, 12, math genius already taking high school calculus. Jonathan Wells, 12, always carried a camera his grandfather gave him. Pedro Santos, 11, smallest kid but the loudest laugh. William Brooks, 11, obsessed with maps and knew every trail by heart. And Tommy Chen, 10, the youngest, who'd begged his parents to let him go with his older brother's group. August 7, 19. Location: Eagle Ridge Adventure Camp, Deschutes County, Oregon. The morning count happened at 6 a.m. sharp. Just like every day at Eagle Ridge, Counselor Brian Hoffman knocked on cabin 3, expecting to hear the usual groans and complaints about the cold. Instead, silence. He pushed open the door to find 8 empty sleeping bags, still zipped up, shaped like bodies were inside them. The boys' belongings remained exactly where they'd left them. Ryan's violin case open on his bed, Marcus's sketchbook showing a half-finished drawing of the mountains, Jonathan's camera sitting on the nightstand, film half-used. But here's what made investigators' blood run cold. The windows were still locked from the inside. The door had been locked too, until Hoffman used his master key. 8 boys had simply vanished from a locked room. The camp director, Robert Carson, called the sheriff at 6:12 a.m. By 6:45 a.m., the first deputies arrived. By noon, the FBI had taken over. Special Agent Diana Foster, who'd worked 12 missing children cases, said this was different from the start. Too clean, too organized. Someone had practiced this. But wait, here's where everything changes. The camp's overnight security guard, Dennis Murphy, wasn't at his post when police arrived. They found him at a bank in Bend, 60 miles away, depositing $40,000 cash at 7 a.m., an hour after the boys were discovered missing. When questioned, Murphy claimed his sick mother had sent him the money for medical bills. No sick mother existed. The bills were sequential, released from the Federal Reserve just 2 weeks prior. Murphy's story crumbled within hours. Yes, he'd taken money. Yes, he'd left his post at 2 a.m., but he swore he didn't know what happened to the boys. Someone had approached him 3 weeks earlier, offered him $50,000 to simply walk away for 4 hours on a specific night, leave the gate unlocked, disable the alarm, take a drive. He'd been given $40,000 up front, would get 10 more later. The man who paid him, Murphy only knew him as Mr. Gray. Mid-40s, average height, forgettable face, paid in cash, contacted him through a burner phone. Murphy had deleted everything, but the FBI recovered one text: package pickup scheduled. No interference, no questions. August 8, 1998. Location: Deschutes National Forest. Search teams covered 16 square miles in the first 48 hours. Dogs tracked the boys' scent to the camp's parking lot, then lost it completely. Not at the road, but in the middle of the lot, as if they'd gotten into a vehicle. But here's the problem. The camp's entrance had a security camera, one of the few precautions they'd invested in. The tape showed no vehicles entering or leaving between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Agent Foster reviewed that tape 47 times. At 2:03 a.m. there was a skip, just 18 seconds of static. When the image returned, nothing looked different. But forensic analysis revealed the truth. The tape had been professionally edited. Someone had removed exactly 6 minutes and 14 seconds of footage, replacing it with a loop of empty parking lot. The parents arrived in waves of panic and fury. Mitchell's father, a Portland lawyer, threatened to sue everyone from the camp to the FBI. Turner's single mother collapsed when she heard Alex's bed had been empty. The Kims flew in from San Francisco, bringing their own private investigator. Santos's grandmother lit candles at the local church, organizing prayer vigils that drew hundreds. But here's what the public never knew. On day 3 of the search, investigators found something in Marcus Cole's sketchbook that changed everything. Hidden between his comic book drawings were 3 pages of notes, written in tiny, careful print. Marcus had been documenting strange things at the camp for 2 days before the disappearance. August 5, black van in the woods, same one 3 times, no camp logo. August 6, man watching us at the lake, counselors didn't notice. Tall, camera with big lens. August 6, night, someone outside cabin after lights out, breathing weird. Told Counselor Johnson he said it was just deer. Counselor Johnson, when questioned again, admitted he'd dismissed Marcus's concerns. Kids got spooked in the woods all the time, but now those observations looked like surveillance. Someone had been watching the boys, selecting them, planning. September 1st, 1998. Location: FBI Field Office, Portland. The break came from an unexpected source. A motel owner in Grants Pass, 200 miles south, called the tip line. A man had stayed at his motel for 3 weeks, checking out the morning the boys disappeared. He'd left behind a box of items in his room, nothing valuable, just papers and camping equipment. But among them was a hand-drawn map of Eagle Ridge Adventure Camp, with Cabin 3 circled in red. The man had registered as Paul Morrison, paid cash, drove a black van. The motel's security footage was poor quality, but it showed him loading 8 small duffel bags into his van the night of August 6th, bags that hadn't been there when he checked in. Here comes another shock that nobody saw coming. The FBI database matched Paul Morrison to 6 other aliases, all connected to a man named Victor Reeves, former social worker, who'd lost his license in 1991 for inappropriate conduct with minors. But Reeves had supposedly died in a warehouse fire in Seattle in 1995. The body was too burned for visual identification, but dental records had confirmed it. Foster ordered Reeves's grave exhumed. The coffin contained the remains of someone who died in a fire, but DNA testing revealed it wasn't Victor Reeves. It was Harold Mendez, a homeless man who disappeared from Seattle around the same time. Reeves had faked his death, assumed a new identity, and spent 3 years planning something elaborate. October 15, 1998. Location: abandoned lumber mill, Josephine County, Oregon. The property records were buried under 3 shell companies, but the FBI finally traced a purchase to one of Reeves's aliases. 60 acres of forest land with an old lumber mill that had closed in 19... Local teens said the place was haunted, avoided it completely. Perfect isolation for someone who didn't want visitors. The raid team assembled at dawn. 40 agents, state police, medical units on standby. Foster led the breach team herself. The mill looked deserted, broken windows, collapsed roof sections, rust everywhere. But the thermal imaging showed heat signatures in the basement level, multiple sources, clustered together. They breached simultaneously from 3 entry points. What they found inside still haunts the agents who were there. The basement had been converted into a living space, not a prison, but something worse. 8 beds arranged like a dormitory, recently used, children's clothes in sizes that matched the missing boys, textbooks on the shelves, but not normal ones. The covers looked standard, math, science, history, but inside, the content was completely rewritten. American history that never happened, science that described impossible things as fact, math problems that trained the brain to accept illogical conclusions. But the boys weren't there. They'd been moved, recently. Coffee still warm in a mug, television still on, playing a recorded loop of a man's voice reading numbers in a hypnotic pattern. And on the wall, a calendar with dates crossed off, ending 3 days ago with a note, Phase 2, Portland Facility. Here's where the investigation took its darkest turn yet. In a locked file cabinet, Foster's team found detailed psychological profiles of not just the 8 missing boys, but 43 other children across 6 states. Each profile included photos taken without the children's knowledge, family financial records, academic transcripts, medical histories. Reeves hadn't just taken 8 boys, he'd been selecting them from a larger pool, choosing specific psychological profiles. Ryan Mitchell, high intelligence, strict parents, rebellion brewing. Alex Turner, behavioral issues, desperate for approval. Marcus Cole, artistic, isolated, observant. David Kim, genius-level IQ, social difficulties. Jonathan Wells, photographic memory, recent trauma. Grandfather's death. Pedro Santos, youngest child syndrome, eager to prove himself. William Brooks, obsessive-compulsive tendencies, need for control. Tommy Chen, separation anxiety, would follow others. Each boy had been chosen for specific vulnerabilities that Reeves could exploit. November 3, 1998. Location: Portland Industrial District. The Portland facility from the calendar turned out to be a warehouse in an industrial area that was mostly abandoned at night. Surveillance showed one person entering and leaving, a woman, mid-30s, who looked nothing like anyone connected to the case. When agents followed her, she led them to a suburban house in Beaverton, where she lived alone as Martha Hendricks, freelance editor. But Martha Hendricks had a basement with a reinforced door, soundproofing, and 8 boys who'd been missing for 3 months. The raid happened at 3 a.m., when the boys would likely be sleeping. Foster went in first, finding them in a large room set up like a classroom. They were awake, sitting at desks, writing in notebooks. When they saw the FBI agents, they didn't run or cry or show relief. They just kept writing. "We can't stop," Ryan Mitchell said without looking up. "He'll be disappointed if we don't finish our assignments." The boys were physically unharmed but psychologically altered. They'd been subjected to 3 months of intensive behavioral modification, sleep deprivation, repetitive tasks, rewards and punishments designed to break down their original personalities and rebuild them. They called Reeves teacher and Martha mother. They believed they'd been rescued from their former lives, that their real parents had sold them to the camp. The reunion footage was never released to the public. 8 sets of parents faced children who looked at them with suspicion and fear. Tommy Chen hid behind agents when his parents approached. Marcus Cole insisted his name was now 7 and refused to answer to Marcus. David Kim solved complex equations compulsively on any surface he could find, numbers that made no mathematical sense but that he insisted were the real truth. But Reeves wasn't in the house. Martha Hendricks, whose real name was Patricia Vance, was Reeves's former patient who'd become his accomplice. She claimed Reeves had left 2 days earlier when he sensed the FBI was close. She didn't know where he'd gone, only that he'd said the first group was just practice. December 1998 to October 2001, the recovery years. All 8 boys were placed in intensive therapy programs. Some recovered faster than others. Ryan Mitchell was the first to fully reject Reeves's programming, his natural rebellion finally serving him well. He returned to school after 6 months, graduated valedictorian, never spoke publicly about his experience. Alex Turner struggled more, spending 2 years in residential treatment before returning home. His parents said he was never quite the same, quieter, watchful, always checking locks twice. Marcus Cole channeled his experience into art, creating a graphic novel about his ordeal that helped other survivors. But he could never shake the feeling of being watched, moved cities 3 times as an adult. David Kim's genius remained intact but fractured. He could still do advanced mathematics but had to fight the compulsion to solve Reeves's meaningless equations. He became a software engineer, built security systems, never lived above the first floor. Pedro Santos recovered his laugh but not his trust. His grandmother said he was a different boy, still kind but careful now, calculated. He became a counselor himself, specialized in trauma recovery. William Brooks held onto his maps, but now they were escape routes. Every building he entered, he memorized the exits first. He became a park ranger, spent his life in open spaces. Tommy Chen, the youngest, retained the least memory of his original life. The 3 months with Reeves had been a larger percentage of his lived experience. He struggled most, required years of therapy, moved through life with a persistent feeling that reality wasn't quite real. Jonathan Wells never picked up a camera again. The photographic memory that Reeves had tried to exploit became his curse. He remembered everything too clearly. He changed his name at 18, disappeared from public records. His family lost contact by his own choice. March 15, 2002. Location, Newark, New Jersey. Victor Reeves was arrested outside an elementary school, photographing children at recess with a telephoto lens. He'd been living as Thomas Grant, working as a substitute teacher, building new profiles. In his apartment, investigators found plans for another abduction, 12 boys this time, from 3 different states, with a compound prepared in Montana. During interrogation, Reeves showed no remorse. He insisted he was saving these children from mediocre lives, giving them purpose, improving them. When asked about the Oregon boys, he smiled and said they were his proof of concept. The real project was yet to come. What chilled investigators most was his final statement. "You found 1 warehouse, 1 assistant, 8 boys. Do you really think I was working alone? Do you think Portland was my only facility? Check your missing persons files from 1992 to 1997. Count how many boys aged 10 to 14 disappeared from camps, foster homes, group facilities. Then ask yourself, where are they now?" The FBI reopened 17 cold cases matching Reeves's pattern. 3 more facilities were discovered, all abandoned. 72 additional profiles were found in encrypted files, but no other boys were recovered. If Reeves was telling the truth, dozens of children had been taken, reprogrammed, and released back into society with new identities over a 10-year period. Patricia Vance was sentenced to 25 years, released after 15 for cooperation. She revealed that Reeves had a network of at least 6 accomplices, but she only knew Martha Hendricks. The others were compartmentalized, contacted through encrypted channels, paid in cash. Reeves himself was sentenced to life without parole on 8 counts of kidnapping and 43 counts of conspiracy. He's currently held in ADX Florence, where he spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. He still sends letters to psychological journals claiming his work was misunderstood genius. Epilogue, present day. The 8 boys from Oregon are now men in their 30s. Most have families, careers, lives that look normal from the outside, but they all share certain traits. They triple-check locks, avoid camps and isolated areas, struggle with trust. They have a private online group where they check in monthly, making sure everyone is still there, still themselves. In 2019, Ryan Mitchell, now a successful attorney, received an anonymous letter. Inside was a photo of him at a coffee shop, taken with a telephoto lens, and a single line: "The teacher remembers his best students." The FBI investigated, but found no credible threat. Reeves was confirmed to still be in prison, no outside contact allowed, but all 8 men received similar letters that year. Same style of photo, same message: someone was watching them, someone who knew what they'd been through. The FBI continues to monitor the situation, but no suspect has been identified. Marcus Cole put it best in his graphic novel's epilogue: "We survived, we healed, we moved on, but somewhere in the back of our minds, we're still sitting at those desks in that warehouse, writing in notebooks, waiting for permission to stop." Some prisons don't require walls. The camp where it all started, Eagle Ridge Adventure Camp, closed permanently. The land was sold to developers who built suburban homes. Families live there now, unaware that beneath their manicured lawns is the parking lot where 8 boys since simply vanished, where someone edited reality and stole 3 months from children who were just excited about a weekend in the mountains. The case file remains open. Reeves's network was never fully uncovered, and somewhere in America, there may be dozens of adults living lives shaped by traumas they can't quite remember, carrying programming they don't know is there, waiting for triggers that might never come, or might come tomorrow.